All right, I don't know if that helped at all. Can you hear me okay now? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. It sounds like you might be fading in and out. I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully the tape will work okay. And if you have to, then you'll hear is on. All right. It says right here my mic is on and I'm at 69 out of 100. I don't think, yeah, I can move it up, but I don't think that's going to change anything. All right. So like you said, the problem must be on your end. So I'm just going to keep going. All right. If you eventually get on and you've got questions or whatever, you can let me know. But again, what I plan on doing is finishing up the Chapter 2 Future Value app that we started yesterday, and then go over Chapter 3, a review of Bootstrap from the Muroc text. Then the rest of the period will be a lab. Tomorrow on Thursday, what I plan on doing is going over with you from this case study, going over with you assignment 3-1 together. All right. And after we get done with that, going over from here, from the project stuff, these 3 projects. That is the plan for tomorrow. We'll do it nice and slow. I've got them all written already. All right. And we'll just go from there. All right. Then the plan is next Tuesday. All right. Which I believe is the day after vacation or our little break. The 5th, we will have a test on chapters 1, 2, and 3. If you have finished the projects and the case study for chapters 2 and 3, you should be fine for the test because it's patterned after that. All right. So with that said, can you hear me now? Well, Grant, I am talking. It sounds like you still can't hear me. Your mic is muted, so I don't know. But if you want to unmute it and let me know if you can hear me.
There we go. Yes, I can hear you. I switched to my phone for the day, and I'll try to figure out my speakers later.
All right. All right. So what I've said, so just to very quickly review it. Today, we're going to complete the Chapter 2 Future Value app that we started working on yesterday. I'm going to show you the errors I had, and I have fixed them. Then we're going to go back in and we're going to bring in the folders and files that we need to bring into our www root folder. After we get done with that, we're going to go over Chapter 3 from the Muroc text, and the rest of the period will be lab. Tomorrow, the plan is we will probably first go over the projects. All right. And we will actually build all 3 of these together. It's really 2 projects. You build the price quote app. Now you might want to turn your mic off. All right. You want to build the price code app for Chapter 2 and then style it in Chapter 3. So we'll go over all of that, and we will build the tip calculator app. All right. We're going to do all of these tomorrow. When we get done with that, we'll go over to the case study, and we will do 3-1 together as a class. We should be able to do all that and still have time left. All right, the rest of the period tomorrow will be lab rather than going into Chapter 4. All right, we'll make lab, and Friday, you've already been told, will be lab. Next Tuesday, the 5th, will be your first test. Now, if you have done this setting up the homepage, and if you have done the projects, the test should almost be a piece of cake for you. really, because it's kind of patterned after the same thing. As always, when you take that test on Tuesday, I will email it to you by 7 a.m. Then when class starts at 12:05 p.m., I will take approximately the first 15 minutes and I will go over the test instructions with you. All right, so with that, let's go back to our program that we were working on yesterday. The first thing, you probably didn't do it, but I did. Somehow, I did not have in here for my clear button, I did not have my ending curly brace. In fact, there was no ending curly brace here and there was no beginning brace here. That's why my clear button wasn't working. All right, so that's the first thing. Yours probably was set up correctly. Now, if I go run this, and I'm going to show you the other errors I had in a moment. The only problem I'm having right now is it doesn't want to let me format the actual future value. So I'm still going to work on that. We're going to get this so it looks prettier in just a bit. But if I come through here and I say $300 at an interest rate of 5%, and I do that for 10 years, and I calculate, I get an answer. You can see it's not formatted, so it's multiple decimal places wide, and it is not in currency format. When I tried to put it into currency format, it gave me a different error. Let's worry
Mr.
about that
Scott,
in a bit. Yes.
I just got, I think I'm talking to you on my phone, but I'm watching on the computer and your screen's not being shared for me.
Okay, let's make sure then that it is. And I very much appreciate hearing that. Okay. Can you see it now?
There we go. Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So going back then and just letting you know, I brought up the future value program. All right. In my copy yesterday, somehow for my clear button, this was not there and this was not there. So mine looked like this. And that's why the clear button wasn't working, because it was looking at the controller as being home space ASP action equal index, which made no sense. So I went back in and did this, and then also went in and did this. And now that I've done both of those, and if I save, and I go back and run the program, what you'll notice, because we still have to do some work on the model, we'll look at that in a minute. But if I put in $500 and I put in an interest rate of 10% for 10 years, and I click calculate, I now get an answer. It is not a formatted answer. We'll have to look at that in a bit. But everything is working. And when I clear, it's clearing. If I put nothing in there, I'm getting my errors. Please enter a monthly investment. Please enter a yearly interest rate. Please enter a number of years. If I put a number of years that's bonkers, I get number of years must be between 1 and 50. I was playing around with the numbers, so don't worry about that. We'll change it back to what we had. For the interest rate, if I put in something like this, it says it must be, like I said, I didn't know what the problem was, so I was jacking with that. I'm going to fix them in just a minute. And if I put in a monthly investment that's too big, you can see I'm getting my errors. And it is not working, and the clear button is working. All right, so all that stuff is working. And again, so the first thing I had to do on mine was to change the code for my clear button. Yours probably was set up correctly, all right, as it was, but mine was not. So then in the future value model, again, I was jacking around with this. All right, I think we said the monthly investment had to be like $100 to $10,000. I believe that's what it was. So I'm going to change it back. And we're going to change it back here. All right. And I think for the yearly interest rate, it was between 1% and 10%. And then finally, for the number of years, I believe we had ours between like 10 and 50. All right. It doesn't really, that's not that important. You're not turning this in anyway. All right. But just so you see that. Now, where I had some problems was in the calculate future value. I'm going to show you that in a minute, but please make sure that you have set monthly investment and yearly interest rate and years, that in each one of those three cases, you put the question mark after the data type. It is okay in here for these to be null because we are not putting them into a database. Once we get to the point where we are, that will change. All right. And like I said, if you're having a hard time reading that, I don't think you are, but just in case, I'll move all of these down so you can read all that. That right now should be the way that we had it yesterday, but you may or may not have put a question mark there, and a question mark there. Please do that now if you have not already done so. And again, we are adding decorations onto here, some validation decorations. There are 2 for each one of these. We are making it required and we are giving it a range. And for the required, we are presenting our own custom error message on each one of these if we leave it off. We are also presenting our own custom error message if we put in a number that's out of range. There are other decorators that you can add onto this as well, just so you're aware of that. So let's jump down to the calculate future value. It's not very big. It's right here. All right. And this I don't need anymore. Again, I was jacking around with it. I tried a whole bunch of stuff. But first thing is the return type decimal should also have a question mark. The int for months should also have a question mark. We don't need that years dot value on there or a monthly investment dot value. This should all be working. Every bit of this should be fine. All right. So I'll leave that up there for just a second. To my knowledge, the other stuff that we had in here, and I'll come right back to this, but the layout file, the only thing I changed was I put the render body in a div. You don't really have to do that. And later we're going to add our own CSS, so I put that in. If you don't want to put that in yet, you can do it later. It's not going to matter. All right, so we've got that. In the program file, we looked at this yesterday. You should have this. This should be what yours looks like from yesterday. So that should be okay. The view imports, I believe we had that in here yesterday. That should be okay. The view start, which just says we're using the layout file, that should be okay. The home controller, I don't believe I changed anything in here. Oh, I did. I'm sorry. You better change this. At the end of your index for your HTTP post, the reason I was getting nothing yesterday was when I was returning the view, I had this empty. I need to return that future value, and I was not. That is why that was empty. I also made a change in here that set this, and the reason I changed it from nothing to 0 is if there was nothing in there, I wasn't sure if that else was being hit or not. But if I try to do a calculation and it comes back 0, I know that else is being hit. So I put that in here. All right. And I don't even know what that is. I was monkeying around with all this stuff. All right. So future value is 0 at the beginning. This was double quote before, but I made it 0. All right. This is exactly the same as it was yesterday. I changed this from the empty string, double quote, to 0, and I made this FV. Now, if I did that too fast or whatever, two things. First of all, you're not turning this in. None of you are. And second of all, this is the second exercise that they wanted you to do at the end of chapter 2. So you've already got a completed copy. So you can take a look at that. If for some reason mine doesn't jive with yours or something looks funky or whatever. All right. And again, in the index here, I already showed you mine was wrong and I have fixed that. And I just showed you this. I'll leave that up for a second. This was in the post and I changed in here in the get. I changed that from the empty string to 0. That's the only change that was made there. And in the post, all right, I've changed that from the empty string to 0 and I added FV in there. All right, that is pretty much everything. So again, using what they showed in the book. All right, so let's go to our book here. And let me back up. All right, back up some more. There it is. All right, this is now working. I can put this stuff in. The only thing I don't have again, and I'll work on that, is the formatting. That may come back later anyway. All right, but when we try to put something valid in there, I wanted to use the same ones they put in the book just to make sure I'm getting the same answer. I don't know what the heck is going on here. Let's see. All right, so we've got that. This is what I wanted. All right, it is page 63. So I want to put in here 100, 3, and 3 and see if I get 3771.46. So 100, 3, and 3. All right. So 100, 3, and 3. Calculate. How many years? Oh, we said 10. So I'll put 10. So it's not going to be the same number. There we go. So we are getting output. I believe everything is right. What I want to spend between now and our break showing you is how to go in and add the other stuff that we don't have right now. So we're going to install Bootstrap first. I want to show you something. All right, and that is this. When you do a tools and you go to NuGet Package Manager and you go to here, all right, if we looked in here, all right, there's nothing installed. I didn't expect there to be, but if I browse and I come in here, I can type in Bootstrap. All right, and notice it finds it. We do not want to download Bootstrap from here. We do not want to do this because the NuGet Package Manager is used for server-side downloads. What we want to do is we want to do a client-side download. So we're not going to use this. And I just wanted to mention that to you. Because again, the stuff that goes into www root, those are our static client-side files. All right. So we won't use the NuGet package manager. All right. It works sometimes, but it's funky. So I went out and looked at the documentation, and the recommendation is that you not do that. All right. Now, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to right mouse click on the name of our project, which is future value. I'm going to go down. Let me try that again. I just want to close these things here. There we go. Come on. All right. So I want to right mouse click on the name of our project, choose add, but I want to go down to about halfway down to client side library. This brings up what's called the library manager. Now, this should be the only time this semester, I believe, that we'll have to use this, because again, we're doing this project from scratch. However, there is a bunch of stuff in here, and if you decide later, hey, I really wish I had this jQuery package or whatever, and if you don't have it in here by default, this is how you can go in and do it. Now, the only time I've ever used this, I've always done the CDN.js. And what CDNJS.com is, the CDN is for Content Delivery Network. It goes out and gets basically the latest and the greatest. All right. So in here, we have to actually give it the old name, which is Twitter Bootstrap. All right. And we don't want a Twitter Bootstrap wizard, as you'd probably guess. All right. We want Twitter Bootstrap. So we want this one. And now you can see it is giving us what I believe is the latest and greatest version, 5.3.1. If I go out to getbootstrap.com and I look, it's telling me 5.3. All right. So it says that is the latest. So the good news is we're using the most up-to-date that there is. All right. Now, as far as what is in here, first of all, notice, all right, the location, it's going to put it into our www root in our library, and it's going to call it Twitter Bootstrap. We don't need the Twitter part when we are saving it ourselves. So I'm going to get rid of that and just call it in www root lib bootstrap. All right. Plus, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. And to be honest with you, we really don't need all of this. There's a lot of stuff we wouldn't have any reason to use. But what we want to make sure is checked in here is our Bootstrap for JavaScript and our Bootstrap for CSS. So there should be a Bootstrap dot somewhere in here, bootstrap.min.css and a bootstrap.min.js. Now, for now, I'll just leave it all in there. It's really and truly not going to hurt anything. All right. But to actually put that in there now, all right, I'm going to click the install button. And you can see down below, it's going through and it's doing a bunch of stuff in here. All right, I'll let it finish. Like I said, there's actually a lot more in there than we need. All right, but this should have started when it's done, finished, it said. Good. Now if you notice, www root has got stuff in it. And if we look, there's a lib folder and it's got Bootstrap in it with all of that stuff. Again, we're not doing anything with SCC or SCSS. We're not doing anything with that, but it's got all the stuff we need in it. So if we bring in Bootstrap classes now, they're going to work. All right. Now, I'm going to show you one more library. Technically, you don't have to put this in, but I want to do this one more time. If you had been using an older version of Bootstrap, so if you use Bootstrap before version 5, we're not, but if you were working on a project, for example, that was using an older version, those older versions of Bootstrap relied on jQuery. You needed jQuery. Come version 5, you don't anymore. But I am going to come in here and I'm going to add, and I'm going to go back down again to client-side library. And in here, I'm going to type in jQuery. And you'll notice there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. All right. And the one I want basically is just, there should be, I think there's a jQuery.js in here. Let me look. So I'm going to put in library jQuery.js. All right. And it's got jQuery.json. No, I think this is still the right one. We'll find out in just a moment. All right. In fact, it doesn't look like it because it's not putting it in there. All right. But the point is, what I wanted to put in here, I was able to do this the last time I did it, was able to just enter jQuery like this, and then it found stuff. Let me try it again. All right. And like I said, there's a boatload of stuff in here. And this does not look the way it did when I did it earlier this summer, but it's okay. All right, I'd keep looking and hopefully eventually I'd find the jQuery one I wanted. All right, and then it would install it, and it would install it again under www.root/lib/js. All right. Okay, we don't technically need that, so I'm not even going to do anything with it. All right. It is also possible that once you install something, that you can actually come in and remove the stuff that you installed. You can do that. All right, so there's a way to get rid of it if you don't want it. All we really need in here is Bootstrap. All right, now I'm going to give you these. I'll put these in the email I'll send out later today, but we're going to talk some Bootstrap in just a couple minutes. But before we do, I want to show you two URLs. Again, you don't have to write them down. I'll give them to you later. This is right from bootstrap.com, and it's their cheat sheet. Oh, what's wrong? Get bootstrap.com docs 5.0. Okay, it should be coming up. This is a good cheat sheet. All right, once it eventually hopefully comes up. There's another one that's at https://hacker.io/blog/bootstrap /cheat/sheet. All right. Well, that's it. Maybe I typed it in wrong. This is good because it basically goes through everything. All right. It's pretty long, but it's good. All right. And then there's the other one, again, from getbootstrap.com. Don't know what, if anything, I typed in wrong there, but in getbootstrap.com /docs/5.0/examples/cheat sheet. And that's this one. Again, fairly long, but well done. And you will get those today. In addition, because with some of you, it's been a while since you've looked at Bootstrap. All right. I would recommend, and this is the one I watched. All right. And that is out on YouTube. And you've seen me reference this guy before, but I went back and watched Brad Traversy's Bootstrap 5 tutorial. And I'll give you all these today. All right. In fact, it was the crash course. It was about an hour. Okay, an hour and 20 minutes. All right. He's even got, this is a website deploy. Here is, there's other stuff. I don't remember which one I used, but it was one of these. All right. And I'll give you all those today, just in case you've got to go back. We're going to go through it in a couple minutes. All right. And we're going to look at some Bootstrap, but sometimes, oh, how do you do this? How do you do this? And that's not going to be in our Muroc book. All right. Now, let's start adding this stuff in. We've added it to our www live folder. It's in there. Our Bootstrap is in there, but we have not yet added it to our program. So let's go into views, shared, and let's go into the layout. All right. And in here, under the title, the first thing I'm going to put in here is those scripts. And it's the same scripts basically that we had when we didn't do this from scratch. So I want a link, rel equals style sheet, href equals tilde, which is going to get us into www.root, lib / bootstrap / css / bootstrap.min.css. All right. And had we put in jQuery, we could do the same thing. All right. The other thing that we want to, of course, add in here then, and it doesn't matter, I'm going to do it down here below this other one, and that is our script tag. So it'll be script source equal, and it's almost the same thing. All right. And that will be tilde lib / bootstrap / js / bootstrap.min.js. Okay. All right. Now I'm looking at this. Let's see. Did I screw up something? I didn't end my tag here. Oops. There we go. All right. So everything is cool as far as I can tell. All right. So we've got all that stuff in there. Now let's pretty this up a little bit. All right. What do I mean? Okay. Let's go to our index.cshtml and try to make this look a little nicer. I mean, when we run it right now, it kind of looks like a jumbled mess. All right, let's see if we can add some stuff in here to make it look nicer. All right, so we've got our title, future value calculator, and let's come in and add some more stuff in here. You may or may not remember, but typically when you work in here, and this is how we're going to do it, all right, we're going to put a div up on top here and put everything down below here in a div. This will be a div class equal container. All right. And everything that we do is going to be in there. So I'm just going to move this down to the end. Like that. And then move all this over. And then we'll start to hopefully pretty this up a little bit. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do, you don't have to do this, but what I did, if you're interested, you can do it. You cannot do it. It's up to you. All right. But I went into www.root and I added a new folder. All right. That I called images. All right. After I did that, I went out to images.google.com and put in here future value. All right. And then look for something that looked like it would be good in here. All right. Just because I don't want to waste a lot of time, let's just grab this one. Okay. So I'm going to grab this one. It looks like it's going to be big. So I may have to do some resizing. We'll see. All right. But I'm going to save this image as, and I might as well save it right where it's going to go. So under the desktop, under future value, under www root, under images. All right. I'm just going to give it a name, and I'll just call this fvalue.jpg. All right. So I have something in there. All right. Why do I want to do that? Just because I'm doing a little bit of work as far as trying to make this look a little bit better. That's all. All right. And how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to take and I'm going to make a header in here. All right. And that header is going to hold two things. Okay. It's going to hold my H1 that says future value calculator. All right. But why don't we take this header and why don't we make it a Jumbotron? Hopefully you remember what that is. Class equal Jumbotron. I'm getting worried because we did put this stuff in here correctly, but it should be finding it on the IntelliSense and it's not. But we'll see when we get going. So class equal Jumbotron. Then underneath that, and let's put this above that H1. All right. So we'll come in here and we will add the image. Give it an idea of logo. All right. Something like that. Or since it is a logo, we can call it logo. All right. That's fine. All right. So we've got that in there. We didn't give it a source yet, so we better do that. We've got the ID and the alt. Let's go back and put the source in. So source is going to be equal to, again, tilde. All right. Now it's going to be tilde slash images slash whatever we call that, fvalue.jpg. All right. And also, so we've got the alt in here. That's all good. All right. But we want this to be responsive. So let's add in here class equal img dash responsive. All right. And you can, if you want to, of course you don't have to. We can put each one of these on its own line. So what are we doing? We're adding an image. There's where it lives. There's the alt tag, and we're making it responsive. Underneath that, all right, we're going to have our title. Now, notice this is the same name as this. So really typing it in again is a little bit duplicative. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm not going to worry about a text primary or anything, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to give it a little room. So I'm going to say class equal MT for margin top, and we'll set that to 3. All right, you can play with it if you want to see exactly what you want to set it to. And then we'll just take this and make this at viewbag.title. And that should put it in as future value calculator. All right, that's all good. All right, then let's take a look at what else we have and see what we have to change in here. Okay, we've got our controller, our action, etc. All right, I'm going to put a class in here of horizontal. So the form is going to end up being a horizontal form rather than a vertical form because it'll look nicer. All right. Then underneath that, we've got our div. Now, right now we've got this, and now we've got a bunch of divs. You can see those. But remember, if we want this to look more bootstrappy, for lack of better words, we're going to come in here for each one of these. For this, whoops, damn it. So for this one, and then for the next one, and for the next one, and for the next one. So for all four of these things, we're going to have class equal row, because that's going to very much pretty it up and get things to line up better. All right. Now we've got label, we've got all this good stuff in here, but we want to kind of position it a little bit so it looks nicer on the screen. All right. So I'm going to add some stuff in here. So for the labels, and I'll do this, I think for each label, I'm going to say equal control hyphen label, just like that. And I'm going to say col3. All right, because I remember there's 12 columns when you work in Bootstrap, and by putting each one of these as a col3, okay, it's going to take up basically a third or a quarter, I should say. So we've got all that. That's cool. Now let's go in, and for our input, okay, we're going to add a class 2, but it won't be control label. All right, it'll be a different class, a form control. Like that. All right, and again, we'll put this col3 in here. So that is going to have to go here. All right. Why doesn't it like that? Oh, because I have two of them. There we go. All right. So again, we'll put that in there with col3. And we're going to do that for each one of these. All right. Now, we're going to add something else in here. All right. And that is, we want to make sure that when we do this validation summary, okay, we're going to want it to be in red, and we're going to want it to be bolded. All right. So I'm going to add in here, and I'll add these for each of the three things I have inputs for: span, ASP, validation for equals. I don't know why I did that, but it did. Validation, ASP, validation for, all right. And I want an equal sign there. I'll fix it in a minute. All right, so equals like that. And we want to say at model dot monthly investment. And we will set the class equal to text dash danger, which will make it red. All right. And we will set the font weight equal the bold. In fact, let's put this on another line so it doesn't scroll off. All right, so we've got class equal text danger, font weight bold, and we'll put a col in there also. All right, and we're getting that error because we haven't ended our tag. It's there. All right, so what I want to do then is I want to go back and do this to the other two rows that are in here. So I'm going to grab this, the class equal control label and col3, and I'm going to put it in here for both my yearly interest rate and for my number of years. All right, then I'm going to go down to the next one where we put class equal form control col3. All right, and I'm going to add that one to both of my inputs. And then finally, I'm going to grab that span. Now I'm going to have to change the name because this is yearly interest rate. And the last one here is going to be years. All right. And finally, at the bottom, because this is our future value, okay, we do have the class equal row. Okay. I don't think we have to monkey with that much at all. We'll see in just a moment. All right. And let's see if I made it better or worse. So, file, save all. Let's run it. I'm hoping I don't get any errors. And I'm hoping it looks a lot nicer than it did. Object reference. Okay, then let's look here. Model, future value model, which should have in it monthly investment. What I should do is just literally put mine out there instead of trying to do it like this. So I don't know what the problem is. All right, model.get return null. Validation. Well, my guess is if I comment this out right here, which I don't really want to do, but if I do comment that out, that I'm going to get another error then on this line. So if I comment that out, I'm going to get another error on this line. So I have to comment that out as well. All right, let's run it again. Well, as you can see, this is way too big. All right, so I'll have to monkey with that. This looks pretty crummy still. All right, when I did it earlier, it looked great. All right. So let's add some of our own CSS in here. If you remember what we said earlier in here, if I go to the index.cs HTML file and then to the layout file, we added this. So this in here, we can put in our own custom CSS. Let's put some of that in. Well, we have to go into www.root. We have to add a new folder. We'll call it CSS, which is what it is. All right. They called it custom CSS, I believe, in the book. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to CSS, add, and I want to come down to, I believe it's new item, but we'll find out. And look in here. And I believe that one of them is a CSS file. If we look long enough. So add new item, and I'm going to search in here. And there it is. CSS style sheet. Right, and I'm going to call it custom.css because that's what I referred to it as in my layout file. All right, and we don't have to do a lot. Let's just do a little bit in here. So I'm going to do a margin. Oh, for each row, I want to do a margin. We'll do a margin bottom of 1 rem. All right, that's it. Now we could put anything we wanted in here. We could do colors, etc. I'm not doing that. All right. All right. Now I'm going to cheat here and do something I really shouldn't do. And that is I'm going to grab this image that we had in images right here, and I'm going to open it. Okay. And I'm going to at least attempt to open it using Paint. Okay. All right, you can see how big it is. It's way too big. I'm going to just resize it like this. I'm going to set it down to about 300 here. And that looks more about the size we wanted. That might be too small. It might be too big. I don't know, but I'm going to do that, make it 300. All right, then I'm going to try running the program again. All right, so now what you can see in here, it isn't perfect, but it's getting there. All right, I still have a little work to do, but we've got our Jumbotron with our image in it, and we've got our title. This is a little bit more lined up. It still isn't perfect. We put this in. We're getting this. Since we didn't put that span in there like that, all right, since we did not put those spans, since they did not work, let's go in and try this. That is, I'm going to go in and not under the layout, under here, where we've got our validation summary right here. All right, I'm going to see, I don't know if it'll take a class in here or not, but I'm going to try it here, a class equal text hyphen danger font weight dash bold. I have no idea if it'll take that or not. It took it, but that doesn't mean it's actually going to work. So let's do a save all, run it again, and put nothing in here, and it didn't. That's why I needed the span, because that's what made it red. So I don't know what the problem is. But what we have done is we have come in here and we have set this up. We have brought in Bootstrap. This now will work as far as if we put in stuff here. It still isn't going to format this. All right, and that didn't move over. So I don't know what the problem is, and I will look at it. I told myself yesterday, I don't want to go back and look at the one in the book. I want to figure it out myself. All right, probably should have went back now looking at it, what's in the book, and I'll do that. But the point is this, what you were able to come in here and do, all right, is we were able to go in here and build a complete application from scratch. It is a working application, albeit it isn't formatted fantastically. On a 1 to 10, it's about a 2. But as you can see, everything that's in here now works. I'll try to fix this up and put in the red, etc., and format that before I actually put this out there in a GitHub repo a little later today. All right. All right. So let me do a file, save all here, and let me exit. Now, what we're going to do next, not this second, but what we're going to do next then is we're going to actually go over chapter 3. All right, in chapter 3, you already know this. It's more or less a primer on Bootstrap. So most of this you've already seen. I've given you already a couple of URLs that you can use for cheat sheets, but I wanted to spend 15 to 30 minutes going over this. And when we get done, all right, I wanted us to take a quick look, and I mean that, all right, as working with Bootstrap classes in the Future Value app and see what they did. All right, there's also this movie list app. We'll talk about that one as well. All right, so as of right now, then, it is 1:03. Let's take a break until 1:15, and at that time we'll go 3. And I need to get a drink, a new drink of water. So I'll be back in here in a couple minutes. All right, it is 1:15, so I'm going to go on and go through chapter 3. Just so you know, at the end of chapter 3, they have you rebuild the future value project, and they have you do it using Bootstrap. So it looks like this when you're done, which is a lot nicer than mine looks, and even a lot nicer than it looked at the end of chapter 2. So you've got a full Jumbotron here. You've got a modal dialog. All right. You've got your labels all lined up, your text box is all lined up, and you've got 2 buttons. Now, when you looked at mine, you saw how bad it looked. I'm fairly certain that even though I did load everything correctly, it is in there, it is not picking up my Bootstrap, and I think that's why it looks as funky as it does. So I'll go back up. All right, and I will do that as soon as we're done today. I just wanted to show you this. And again, this is modal and it's collapsible, so you can get rid of it. And you'll notice in here, all right, you get the messages and they're on the side. They're not bolded, but that is still fine. And if you put in things that are out of range, it changes to these. All right. And again, that's the numbers they used. I used my own numbers, but it's no biggie. And again, I think if we put in 100 and 3 and 3, that should give us the 377146, I think it was. There it is. And the clear works as well. So that's what we want to have at the end of this. All right, so let's stop the run and take a look at what's in here. I don't think this is going to take that long. A lot of it will be review. All right, and you should know by now, as well as I do, that the best place rather to go is getbootstrap.com and start looking at the documentation that's in there. Again, I gave you their cheat sheet, or I will, and I'll give you the one from Hacker as well. All right, because why? Because we want a responsive design. All right. So you mentioned, Grant, that you were looking or watching this lecture on your phone. You should be able to run this from your phone. You probably don't have the software, but all right, or look at it on your phone and it should still look decent. That's what we want with a responsive user interface. All right. So again, they're going to talk in here how to add these client-side libraries. We kind of looked at it already with LiveBand. We'll see if I did anything wrong. I didn't, maybe there was an enable here that I didn't do. That's okay. Then I'll go back and redo it. All right. You should remember by now the main classes of the Bootstrap grid system. You know that 12 is the magic number. All right. So you could have any permutation of 12 columns of size 1 each to 1 column of size 12 and anything in between. All right. As far as how the grid system works, and we'll get into that in just a bit, that's going to depend on the type of, you'll set up breakpoints basically, and they're set up really for you automatically based on the type of medium you're using to take a look at what you're working on. All right. Talk a little bit about forms, buttons and images, margins and padding. And as it says, then we'll look at the code for the future value app. All right. For tables, what do we have to do for tables when you think about it? If you're working with a table, and we did do this the first day when we went through that simple example that we created, if you remember that. All right, we use table bordered, and we use the table class itself, and we use table striped. Now there's more table classes than that, but I thought that was plenty. All right. Aligning and capitalizing text, context, fine. Some more components, you can read these yourselves. All right. And then finally, the work with the navigation bar. Now, we don't really need a navigation bar in here. Technically, if you're working with a single form, there's really no need for a navigation bar. All right. But you've already seen this again with the first project we did this semester, that we had 3 different forms. We had our layout form. We had the form that showed all projects. We had the form, actually there were 4. We had the form that showed a single project. And we also had the form that that showed the about us. All right, so we'll look at all that stuff. Again, it's a long chapter, but hopefully at least a lot of it'll be review. All right, and again, I don't like to read to you. You should now know the fact that basically there's 3 things that make up responsive design. One is shown right here. All right, and those are media queries. Another one basically is responsive images. All right, and actually those are the 2 biggest ones that are in here. All right, and the main reason I thought Bootstrap wasn't working is that the size of that image didn't work or didn't resize, even though I used the image responsive. So I didn't think it was working, and evidently it was not. All right. So as it says, figure 3.1 shows a version that uses Bootstrap. Well, I think it's going to be the one that they end up creating throughout the chapter. All right. Now this already looks a little bit nicer. There's always a lot of debate over, do you want to put a validation summary on top here, or do you want to put it along the sides? You can put it on the top, you can put it on the sides, you can put it below each entry, etc. So there's a lot of places that you can put it. And they're showing in here how it's going to look again on different screen sizes. All right. So as mentioned, you can use Bootstrap to do this. That's one of the things. I will mention, I may have mentioned this yesterday, I don't remember, but there is another popular framework that's really kind of coming of age right now, and that is Tailwind, which allows you to do a lot of the stuff you can do with Bootstrap. You don't do it in exactly the same way, though. All right. So as it says here, the MVC template that we used in chapter 2 when we built the project, when we chose that we wanted the ASP.NET with the MVC in it, had Bootstrap in it. All right. So they're showing here, it says figure 3.2 shows how to add the Bootstrap library or .js library that it depends on. All right. And that uses the library manager. I already looked at that, but before we do, all right, the reason that you need Popper, the popper.js library, is because if you're going to work on something with a modal like they showed on here, I believe it requires Popper. All right, just so you know that. As it says, in addition to these 2 libraries, the MVC template includes 3 jQuery libraries. I already said this to you, but just so you see it in the book, Bootstrap versions before 5.0 were highly dependent on jQuery. With 5.0, they're no longer needed. So as it says, you don't need to include these libraries unless you want to. Now, one thing that they do is they are another way. All right, it says these libraries are necessary to enable client-side validation. All right, so we'll go back and we'll take a look at all this stuff. And by the time, this is what I did this morning. This morning, they're having their first test tomorrow on chapters 1, 2, and 3 in the AWD1115 class. You may or may not remember that, but it's a pretty simple test. But still, people were kind of freaking out. So basically, I did a pretest for them, and foolishly, I did it just basically off the top of my head. So it had a couple mistakes in it, and it was close to the end of class. So rather than go and look them up and put them in, I told them I put the GitHub repository out there, but I said I'll fix it and then I'll update it, which is what I did. It took me like 5 minutes after class. And in the same way, after class today, I will quickly go in and I will clean up the project that is out there right now, and I will have it out there hopefully by no later than 3 o'clock or so this afternoon. I think we're going to be done here probably around 2 o'clock, but we'll see. All right. One thing to note here is it says the MVC template stores the jQuery validation library in a folder named jQuery validation. If you delete this, as it says, and you put a different version in, okay, that it can be screwed up, for lack of better words. Now, the key takeaway is what you see in the bottom paragraph here. By convention, all client-side libraries are stored in the www.root/lib folder. All right. And as it says, okay, when you use the procedure to do this, Visual Studio creates a file named libman or libman.json. And you can actually go into that file, and they'll show this in here, and make modifications to it. Now, this is very similar to the stuff we did. All right. Now, they're putting in a version. You don't have to do that. What should happen is, if you want the latest and greatest, you should be able to just put Twitter Bootstrap in there. That should go out to CDN.js and grab the latest and greatest. Now, I didn't grab Popper, which could have been another problem. I don't know. But again, we'll fix it. All right. Notice client-side libraries automatically included by the template. You can read them yourselves. All right. And how to add them is pretty much what I showed you. All right. Right click on the project name, choose add client-side library item. This is the same stuff I just told you. All right. And again, finally, at the bottom of the page here, you can use the library manager to add client-side libraries. All right. And you probably will very rarely, if ever, have to do this. All right. All right. It says, again, Visual Studio, when you start adding this stuff, when you add the client-side libraries, it creates a libman.json file like the one that you're going to see. All right. It says if you want, you can easily manage the versions by editing the contents of that file. So if we take a quick look at the contents of the file, this is what it looks like. It's just basically, it's a JSON file. You know that because it's surrounded by the curly braces. And these, where it's got provider, etc., these are all the things that have been added. And you'll notice that in each case, the provider is CDN.js. All right. And you can see the different libraries that are in here. And to my knowledge, all, at least most, and I believe all now, we had 5.3.1, but this book also came out, even though it's a 2022 book, it was probably written towards the end of 2021. All right. So as it says, you can open this file and edit it if you want to specify correct versions or change things. Sometimes it is possible that you might especially want to downgrade something. If you're using something older that was available in an older version of Bootstrap or jQuery or whatever, you could downgrade by just changing this file here. All right. And as it says, to remove them, you can right click this file and just basically say clean it, which will get rid of everything that's in there. All right. So why do you do that? Well, you do that so you're able to add the stuff that's in it, of course, right? So they're going to come in here and they're going to start adding the stuff you'd want to add. Now, when you look in here, we already put this stuff in. Okay, we actually went in and we added bootstrap.min.css. We added bootstrap. I did the min.js. It doesn't matter which one, or it shouldn't matter which one you do. All right. And if you do want to use modals, which I did not include, you add the popper.min.js. I will go back and make sure I've got all that stuff in there. Now, this stuff that's in here, that is supposing that you have added jQuery. All right. jQuery.min.js goes in as one thing, but then you've got to go out to the library manager again and add the jQuery validation. That's a second thing. Then you've got to go in, and if you want the unobtrusive validation, you have to add a third thing. All right. All right. And as they mentioned right there, when you start putting that stuff in, you saw it in the version that I did. It made a dist folder and it put the stuff in there. All right. And I believe this is just more of the same stuff we've already had. Notice again, most of these libraries include a minified version, the .min. All right. Typically, that's going to be the one you want to use because it's a small, it'll load faster and it'll take up less space. The rest of the stuff, I believe you already know that's in here. So the rest of the chapter then, or at least most of the rest of the chapter, is again a primer on Bootstrap. We've had this already. You went through Bootstrap. We learned it in the AWD1000 class. All right. So as it says, Bootstrap uses the grid system that's based on containers. Containers contain rows. Rows contain columns. All right. As it says, a row can contain up to 12 columns. This is nothing new here. All right. So if we start taking a look, and there are several examples here, if we start taking a look, if you remember, there's a container, which I used, and a container fluid. The difference between a container and a container fluid is the container actually puts a little bit of margin padding on the sides and on the top and bottom, where the container fluid is greedy and tries using everything. And again, containers contain rows, rows contains columns, and columns, as it said, should not exceed 12. If they do exceed 12, if you've got 14, the first 12 will go in one row, the bottom 2 will go in the next row, etc. If you decide that you want to start being a little more creative, all right, you can use offsets to make sure something is right justified. So if you had something, for example, that you wanted to put way on the right and have it take up half the space, you could do that. We'll look at offsets and stuff when we get into talking about, for example, using admin. And because when we do that, we'll want to move that stuff in our nav bar way over to the right. All right. Again, here's what are sometimes referred to as the breakpoints that are in here. All right. A newer one is XXL, and that's for projector units and things with that are very big. XL is typically the one you're going to use if you are working with either a laptop or a desktop. All right. Sometimes you might use large. The one you typically use for tablets is medium at 568, and the small is typically used for phones. Of course, unless you've got a smaller phone, etc. And I've seen those commercials. I find it very interesting how there's a saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same, that now they're basically bringing flip phones back. All right, they look much different than they did previously, but the idea is, even on the commercial where the girl goes, I'd never use one of those until she sees it. All right, and they've got some examples in here. Okay, so again, since this says col medium 4, as it says, it'll span 4 columns on medium and above. So really on 768 pixels or more, and it'll be what? It won't span 4 columns. Be single column basically below that. And there's all sorts of ways that you can set these up. I don't think I'm telling you anything in here you don't already know. Finally, if you don't assign a column size, all right, for the next smallest one will be used. Okay. The grid system, again, we've talked about this before. It's the magic of 12s, and there's a lot of different ways that you can set this up. All right. One of the nice things about using Bootstrap is it's fairly easy to lay out what you want to do. All right. Some people will tell you that, yeah, it's even easier than if you use grid or if you use Flexbox. All right. That's a matter of debate, though. So again, very similar to what you saw before. All right, as far as how many columns, we didn't add that stuff, but the container with the rows. Bootstrap classes again. And my hope is that you understand the difference between REMs and Ms. All right. Now, we did talk about this in the AWD1000 class. It says here a rem works similar to an M, but its size is relative to the root rather than the current element. What that means is when you use M's, it tries to size things based on the size of the thing right above it, type of an idea. When you use rems, it tries to size things based on what's defined on the top. I tend to use rems almost all the time. All right. Not everybody agrees with that. And I know people who use M's or mix them. Bootstrap to work with forms. Bootstrap has a lot of form classes. And as we start to take a look in here, if this does, there we go. Hopefully you remember this, that by default, it looks pretty ugly. So by default, I mean, one of the things that we did, if you remember, was we set ours equal to horizontal. All right. And rather than this, we wanted something where you had email and then the text box, password, and then the text box, etc. By default, though, again, this is greedy. It tries taking up as much room as you'll let it. All right. But it's not hard to come back in here and add some stuff to it. So by default, as it says, they have a vertical layout. So if you remember, I changed it to horizontal. All right. To create a text area, as it says, there's the text area element, and you can work with list boxes. You can basically work with anything that exists in HTML. All right. In this case right here, what don't we have? We don't have we don't have a label. All right. We do, it's in here, but it's in here itself. It's kind of like the placeholders that we used in regular HTML, but it's not called a placeholder in here. So again, there's a lot of ways that this can be done. All right. And they show you the text in both cases. Now, I will tell you that when we get to the point, even on the first test, some of the work that you do, all right, a portion of each test will be on how nice you make it look. Because again, the idea is eventually we'll want to take one or more of our projects and we'll want to put them out on the internet. Again, this is a way for you to sell yourself. All right. It's kind of, I think at least, it's kind of neat for you to be able to go in and tell a potential employer, oh, here's a URL if you want to see some of my work. All right. Okay. Yeah, there's floating labels. Yeah, that's cool. Buttons and images. Again, a lot that we haven't already talked about in here. All right. If you remember the coloring, primary is the blue, secondary is the green, danger is the red. All right. And I don't even, there's more. We'll see them in just a minute. All right. I did image responsive. Maybe I should have done an image fluid. I don't know. On mine. Rounded if you want to round the picture. Okay. Again, I don't want to waste your time, but I'm hoping at least that this is all coming back to you, anybody who's watching this, and it makes sense and you remember it. All right. Again, when you're doing margin and padding, as it says, you use the M class for margin, the P class for padding. MT would be margin top. ME would be the equivalent of margin end. All right. MB would be margin bottom, and the same thing with padding. We'll show you plenty of examples of this. My hope is that you all remember the difference between margin and padding. If you remember the CSS box model, all right, you had your content, and around your content, all right, around your content was an invisible box that said basically, well, let's look at it. There we go. That's not a good picture. That's a better one. So you've got your content, and content has padding around it. Of course, You can set it up so it has no padding. You could set something up if you want two things to butt up to one another so that it has no padding, no border, and no margin. But the point is, padding is basically the area around the content. Margin is the area between two things of content, so to speak. All right, that's the way that I look at it, at least. And again, here's some examples of different things that you can do in here. All right, and you go in here, notice what it says. You're using rem units in here, okay? And the padding for the top, it says, goes from 0 to 5. All right, by default, these are the rem units that those correspond to. Okay. And the best way is always to learn, so just go back and bring something up and start playing with it. All right, so the code for the future value app. Okay, this is what we attempted to come in here and do. Now, is ours perfect? Well, you already know that it's not, but it will be a little bit later today when I go back in, work on it and fix it a little bit. One thing you notice that we did do was we came in here and we put everything inside of a container. All right. Then we took our form. All right. We did a little bit of stuff with a form in here. I think we did something they didn't do, but again, in here, everything was in a div with a class of row. All right. And I did do the column MD3 and the form label for all these, or the form control. So you've seen this stuff already. Did it work? It actually probably worked, but like I said previously, I'm not sure as to whether or not the material that I try to put in the libraries works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those right after the period ends and redo them. See if I can get them in there correctly. All right, tables we mentioned before. There is a table class. There are quite a few table classes. These are the ones you're going to probably use the most often. All right. The only ones that I've used in here so far have been table, table bordered, and table striped. You can hover, so as it says, you can have the row change color when you put your mouse over it, and responsive that you can set as well. All right. And you'll notice there's a W with size for width, and it defaults to auto size, which is what I use. All right. So they've taken and they changed that to this by adding some borders in here and doing some zebra striping. There it is. They've also got it set to hover, although they're not showing it right now. Says you must include the T-head and T-body elements in your table for the Bootstrap classes to work correctly. And if you remember, one time we did put that in and one time we didn't. What do I mean? When we did that example the first day, we did use a T-head and a T-body when we were showing all of our products. But when we were just showing one product, it was not necessary for us to use the T-head and the T-body. All right. Aligning and capitalizing text. I mean, the best thing to do again is to take a look at the examples. All right. And the text center, again, that's, again, I was showing the students this morning in the AWD1115 class how to use a text align center. It's basically the same thing. All right, but these are the Bootstrap equivalents of those. All right. Uppercase, lowercase, and then title case type of thing. All right. Providing context, as it says, these apply color to an element. And again, those are the colors. That's what I was looking for before. The royal blue is primary, gray is secondary, green is success, that off blue or teal, whatever you call it, is info. Kind of a yellow orange is warning, and red is danger. All right. It is possible that rather than using these, you can actually go in and use customized colors There's really typically very little reason for doing that, but it is possible to do. These context classes can be used for buttons. They can be used for backgrounds. They can be used for virtually anything that you want to provide, that you want to provide color for. So here they've used it for text. All right. All right. Button groups. Again, is this the kind of thing you'll use often? You tell me, you know what I mean? I don't use these. I don't like the way they look, but the idea of doing this is when you create a button group, what you can do when you are doing formatting is you can format the group and have what you do in the group apply to every button that's in there. All right. So there may be a very valid reason for doing that. I guess maybe with me, it's just that I'm not used to doing things that way. All right. Notice here, there's two button groups, so we've got the split between them. I using some of this stuff, or at least we might. All right. Here they've taken some buttons and put pictures on them. In fact, a lot of times today for home and cart, you don't even see the English anymore. You just see the images. But, you know, a lot of times you end up using like the badges and stuff to show how many items are in a cart, for example. All right, like that. Like that. So as it says, the icon is a symbol used to decorate or add meaning. The badge is used for highlighting text, etc. They both have their place. Button drop downs. Okay. Are we going to use this? There's other ways of using it. We're going to use list groups. So what we're going to have is, rather than a drop down, we're going to have the equivalent of what looks like a list box, and it'll have all of our hyperlinks in there, which if we want to, we could style to look like buttons. And, you know, for instance, you know, when we go in and we start working on this sporting goods type of database that I'm working on right now, we're going to have about 6 or 7 different things in there. We'll have footballs, basketballs, golf balls, tennis balls, bowling balls, and I think there's one more I'm missing, soccer balls. I believe it's those 6. All right. And when we put them in there, they'll look like this. All right. But at the top, we'll have an all button, which will grab everything. And then we'll break it down, probably into alphabetic order. It's the way I've got it set up now. All right. List groups. That's what we're going to end up using as a list group rather than a button group or whatever. All right. And ours will be formatted to look a little nicer than this. Breadcrumbs. All right. Sometimes when you're creating this kind of stuff, you have to be very cognizant of your audience. And what I mean by that is breadcrumbs and a breadcrumb trail is really nice for people who might go out to a site once in a while to let them know exactly where they are. All right, that's the way that I look at it. Some people use breadcrumbs with everything. Again, they do put this in here, this dismissible link. All right, that's an alert, and they do have this in the example that they have. So they look a little different than this if you don't like that kind of look and feel. All right, navigation bars, and again, you should know this. Okay, you can take navigation bars and make them look umpteen different ways. All right. When we were working with Bootstrap and we worked with navigation bars, you may or may not remember this, but they were really, really big. And part of the reason that they were really, really big, all right, part of the reason for that is there was a ton of stuff put in there, ARIA, that was put in for accessibility. We're not going to be as concerned with that with what we're working on. And it's not that accessibility is unimportant. Of course it's important, but we're more concerned with just getting stuff done, moving on, getting the next thing done, etc. Okay. So as it says, you can use the CSS classes for navs rather, to create tabs and pills. So if you want this to look more or less like buttons, you can do that if you want to. The nav bar itself, okay, there's a lot of different stuff you can do. The only reason I'll bring this up, if you look right here, you can see it's got My Guitar Shop, which is probably the name of the project, Home, which is one link, Products, which is a link, About, which is a link, and then Cart. The reason I'm showing you this is what we're going to be working on for our case study for chapter 3 doesn't look that different. All right. Now there's a bunch of junk in here, but all this stuff that's here, home, products, etc. Notice products, technicians, customers, incidents, and registrations. All you're doing here is you're giving the user 2 different ways to access the same stuff. That's it. All right. Navbar positioning, we'll talk about that stuff as far as how to move something and right justify part of it, how you do that, what you might want to do that, etc. Okay. And that's it. So to very quickly look at this, this is what I'd like you to do for the rest. Not that you have to do it today, and I'm not going to know whether you do it or not anyway. But what I'm going to do, this is the way I handle this stuff. I've already got these programs written. So I've got the case study, I've already got it done. All right. The projects, I've already got them done. But what I do is I redo them every semester. All right. And then I sometimes go back and look at what I've done previously. Does it look the same? Did I add something into one I didn't have to the other, etc. But I want to mention to you. So this is going to be the running project throughout the semester. I don't want to read to you. All right. It's Sports Pro Technical Support. It will have a database once we get into it. All right. And as you may or may not have guessed already, when we come into here, this is going to bring up different pages. All right. And we're going to build it very incrementally. So when we build the first one here, we go through this, you'll notice there aren't very many specifications. All right. We're just building this, just like this. It's not going to work yet. We don't have a products page or a technicians page, etc. But if you look, when you get into chapter 4, well, now we're starting to do that. All right, so there's our products. And when you grab a product, you can edit it and bring it up. This should look familiar to you because it's basically the same thing that we did in day 1, although we weren't using a database. Then we do the same thing for technicians. All right, where we're able to add and edit and delete a technician. And we got the same thing for customers. Of course, there's different fields in here, but the ideas behind these are all the same. So that's what you'll do when we get to chapter 4. And finally, as it says, there's incidents. So what we may end up doing for chapter 4 is we may end up doing one of those together, and then you'll do the other 3 or 4, whatever there is, by yourself. All right, so please, for tomorrow, read this case study so you've got an idea of what it's about. And the other thing, again, that we'll do tomorrow is we'll start going through projects. We will do many of these projects. We will not do every one. What I tried doing last semester was every one. And what ended up happening is we started spending so much time with some of these projects in here that had quite a bit of code in them. All right. So we spend so much time doing those that students had very little time to work on as lab time. So we'll spend more time at the beginning as we're getting used to it. And some of these in here, we'll see. It might even be that I go back and send you my copy, not put it out there as a GitHub repo, but just send you my copy of the code. And we may spend a period or two then looking at that code. All right. Hopefully everything I said made sense. Hopefully everything I'm asking you to do made sense. Again, tomorrow we will go over these three and this one. That's what's on the agenda tomorrow. Friday, as I've mentioned to you already, I have to take a vacation day, not by choice, but it's just the way it worked out. And then on next Tuesday, the 5th, will be our first test. Now, one thing I'll have to do by tomorrow, because I'm not going to physically see you then probably on Friday. So one thing I'll do is I'll go back and look at the first test and make sure that there's nothing in there that will surprise you. I want to make sure that I want everybody to get A in the class, of course, but I want to make sure there isn't something that's put on a test from chapters 1 to 3 that is not inside of chapters 1 to 3. All right. So with that said, all right, I hopefully you've been following along and everything in here makes sense to you. I would strongly suggest that, again, if you need a bootstrap, get one of the 2 cheat sheets I gave you, or both. And if you don't want to do that, otherwise, I'd suggest that you go back to the end here of chapter 3 and take a look at this example. All right. Now I'm going to clean mine up, and when I do, it's going to look more like this one. Okay. But I'm not planning on going over this one, the code you've got again in the book. And they also have this movie database in here. All right. Feel free to go through that too. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. All right. Other than that, if you don't have any questions, that's all I've got for today. I know it's a little early. All right. But I didn't know how long this would take today. I wanted to give you as much time as possible to try doing those 3 projects and the first case study yourself. So I will talk to you tomorrow at 12:05. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.